Move on now to the home stretch here. The New York Giants, pick 25 on the clock. Where are you headed here?
I think they need weapons. I know they've signed a lot of weird slot receivers, Paris Campbell and Isaiah Hodgins, Jamison Crowder, and I don't know what these are, but they're not top receivers. So I'm going to draft Jordan Addison, the receiver out of Southern Cal here. I know Addison is small, but he played outside at Pitt. He played outside at USC. He is 173 pounds, but his route running is so good. I think this gives that Brian Daboll offense a wide receiver one that can actually work with.
Yeah, I mean, didn't test well as maybe that we thought he would, and was not able to do anything at the Pro Day because was the Pro Day, it was like a storm down there or something.
Yeah,
like the rare Southern California monsoon will just happen to go on during the UCLA and Southern Cal Pro Days, and that's how you get a 4.9940 from a.
I still don't believe it for Jake Bobo at UCLA. I mean, come on.
But yeah. All right. So on the clock now, the Dallas Cowboys. And I mentioned this with Jacksonville, and I'm going to circle back to it. I think this is another spot. This could be our third, if you count Skoronski, this is going to be our third interior offensive lineman to go in round one. I don't know if that's a record or not. It feels high, or in modern times anyway, like the last 20 years. But let's move Tyler Smith back out to right tackle. As I've never been a Terrence Steele fan. I just don't think he's any good. And didn't think he was any good coming out. Still don't believe it. Let's move Tyler Smith, last year's first-round pick. We'll move him out to right tackle. Plug in Steve Avila from TCU here at left guard and Prosper.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I thought you'd go with Cyrus Torrance here, but you're going with Avila. Do you have him rated higher than Cyrus Torrance?
They are very close on my board. They are 3 and 4 side by side, very close. I think it's, scheme fit, I think, is more Avila here. If I'm the GM of the Cowboys, I think he's going to be more of a plug and play, and we don't have to do as much as we would possibly with Torrance.
No, it's fair. I think it's definitely a need for them. I think they'll consider that guard position pretty closely.
Buffalo Bills on the clock now for you, Shane. And this is another team that does not have a great many hole on the roster, if any at all.
They don't have too many. And ultimately, I think there's some value plays here. And if I'm the GM of the Bills, I don't really love the pass rushers the Bills have drafted the past couple of years. In 2020 and 2021, they just got these big pass rushers. I like Greg Rousseau, but I'm not a Boogie Basham or an AJ Epinesa fan. Von Miller's ending his career here pretty soon. So I'm going to draft an athletic pass rusher, and I'm going to take Myles Murphy, the edge out of Clemson. I think Myles Murphy, he's kind of fallen a bit. He was thought, man, maybe this guy's a top 5, top 10 pick. He's super athletic, but just didn't have the pass rushing chops at Clemson. I think a place like the Bills, it helps keep that defense going.
Yeah, talent-wise, athleticism-wise, Murphy is in play. I'm not sure why he's fallen down a lot of boards. He's number 3, number 4 on my edge rusher board here currently. So we'll see what happens. Another guy who's been mocked here late in this first round area, Dallas is another one that I've seen mocked. Will McDonald from Iowa State. Is he a guy you like late in the first round for one of these teams?
I do. He's getting a lot of looks. Like, I have him further down my edge board, but I could see a team drafting Will McDonald. He's just undersized at 239 pounds. You need the right scheme fit. Like him and Keon White both, I think, could sneak into the draft the first round here.
There you go. That brings up the Cincinnati Bengals, pick 28. And I think a lot of people would consider tight end here, but the tight end value kind of got picked clean before they came on the board. A couple offensive tackles I think they'll consider at this spot. I think they would love Darnell Wright if he fell to 28, but I think that ship has sailed. Both tonight and in reality. I think as far as right tackles goes, which is where this position will be, I think DeJuan Jones is the best pure right tackle left. I don't know that his value's there in this area right now. I'm not going to make the pick here, but I just want to ask you the question. Do you think Anton Harrison can play right tackle like immediately?
I think he could. I think he could. Yeah, I think you could make that move of him to right tackle and feel good about it. You know, it's always an adjustment moving sides, but he has the skill set that's for sure.
Well, the Bengals are another team where maybe there's not a great too many spots that are going to hit the field immediately. But the one place I think they can use where the value is also lining up right here for me with Chidobe Awuzie coming off an ACL. You drafted Cam Taylor-Britt in the second round last year. I think he's going to be a good starter on one side. You're going to need to replace Awuzie probably next season. And here's an outlier that we talked about earlier with Bryce Young. We talked about it with Kalijah Kancey. I'm going to pick Emmanuel Forbes, cornerback from Mississippi State. He's an athletic freak. There's not another corner in this draft class, Shane, that's got the ball skills he has.
Nope.
I mean, he had 3 pick sixes last year, 6 in his career. But he weighed 166 pounds. And he looks every bit of 166 pounds. But if you watch the tape, he plays like he doesn't play like he weighs 166 pounds. He ain't scared, as they say. He will come up and hit in the run game, and I think he fits. Other than the weight, I think he fits everything the Bengals and Lou Anarumo look for in a corner, and that's why I'm going to go with him here.
So I think there's a chance he goes in the first round because of those ball skills. Do you think he's a realistic possibility for the Bengals at 20?
I didn't 2 weeks ago, but I think he is now, and I think Cam Smith would get consideration here as well. But I don't think Keely Ringo does. So if for some reason that Deonte Banks was still on the board, I think he would be in consideration here as well. I don't know that any of the defensive ends that are still on the board, like if Miles Murphy had this is like last year all over again where George Karlaftis went one spot ahead. I think Karlaftis is the pick if he doesn't go one spot ahead of the Bengals last year. But I think this is another one of those deals where if Miles Murphy was on the board at 28, maybe he's the pick. But with what we got here, I like Forbes. Like I said, I don't necessarily think this is a 2023 pick, but 2024 and beyond, I think he's a great fit in Cincinnati.
It makes sense. You know, I love Emmanuel Forbes. He's my corner 5. This is where I have him, so I would love it.
He's also my corner 5. I do have Cam Smith ahead, but I think he's the ball skills, and I may end up moving Forbes ahead of Cam Smith, and that's hard for me to do. Shane.
I know it is. Look,
but you're on the board now with the New Orleans Saints, who got back in the first round after trading their coach Sean Payton to the Denver Broncos. So the Saints are not a good team. So you can go a great many ways here, and they're probably going to play.
Look, Derek Carr is going to take us to the promised land here as the GM.
I said what I said
about it, so don't get on it. I think with Mayer and Kincaid gone, tight ends off my board. They really need defensive line. I do think it's a position I can get later in this draft. I don't see a defensive lineman. I think Brian Breesy, Mozzie Smith are in play. But I think it's just better edge rushers on the board. Cam Jordan's getting up there in age. Peyton Turner maybe hasn't exactly worked out.
That hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts the brand a little bit.
I know. Carl Granderson, they have theirs okay. But I'm going to take a player I think is criminally underrated. I think should be a first-round pick. Should be a slam dunk first-round pick. And looks like he won't be. And that's Isaiah Foskey, the edge rusher out of Notre Dame. I don't know how you have multiple double-digit sack seasons for a big time school like Notre Dame, playing against big time competition, always, one of the hardest schedules in college football. And I mean, he gets it done consistently, game in, game out. Someone's getting a steal in day 2, but if I was GM, I'd take him day 1.
Yeah, I mean, he struggled a little bit for me at the Senior Bowl, but it's like I get it. But like you said, the production is unmatched at a big program like that with that kind of production. That's got to carry some weight. I think.
And he's athletic. It's not like he's not an athlete,
Yeah, that too. I mean, he is a super athlete. So, yeah. So we talked about Philadelphia back up here again, and they drafted the corner Witherspoon. And here's another where we kind of we don't really have a hole here, but we could be moving on, in the next year or two from, say Brandon Graham, as a pass rusher. So it's the bend, the athleticism, the speed, the production as well. And we talked about him a little bit earlier. I'm going to go with Will McDonald, the edge rusher from Iowa State, here to Philadelphia as sort of to kind of be that spitball pass rusher towards the end of the games early before he settles in maybe as a full-time role in 2024 and beyond.
I think it could happen. I think this late first edge rushing group is going to be interesting.
Who are some other edge rushers that maybe you would have slid in here in place of Will McDonald?
So above him, I have Lucas Van Ness and Keon White. They're both very different pass rushers from Will McDonald, though. Will McDonald, like we mentioned before, 239. Those guys are 272, 285, bigger edge rushers. So I think it's a different flavor. And that's, I think, what we're going to see in this late first round. I mean, I think they're legitimately could be up to, I think there's 9 edge rushers that if you told me went in the first round, I wouldn't be surprised. All 9 won't go, but once you get the 31, 30, you take who you want.
Yeah. And like I said, Philadelphia is playing with house money at this point with some of these draft picks. So, finish up the first round here, Shane. Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs pick 31.
Well, I'll take a player that both we've talked about. Both of us are not super high on, but is going to go much higher than 31. I'm going to take Lucas Van Ness, the edge rusher out of Iowa here. I think he's a better player to me than Ryan Bresee is as interior lineman. They drafted George Karlaftis last year and signed, Charles Omenihu. I think they can continue to have. They don't have a third pass rusher. They can continue to rotate him in, and down the line, I think Van Ness can even play some stand-up linebacker, be used in different positions. I think it could be a good fit at 31.
Pair with Karlaftis from last year. Yeah, so we're going to replace Frank Clark, right? They've moved on from there, so it could be a good spot for Van Ness. I'm not overly a fan of his. There's a few edge rushers I would have taken there ahead. Just because I've got the graphic up here, I forgot to change it 25 to 32. Because we've been going through 30. I'll pick for your Pittsburgh Steelers here at 32.
All right.
And we're going to give them a corner. We're going to give them Cam Smith corner.
Yeah, there we go. I'd love it. I'd love that.
I didn't figure you would be opposed to Cam Smith going there 32nd.
Oh, Cam Smith's my corner 6. Actually, I think our draft had my 6 corners in order going. So
I'll quickly run through some players that did not get selected here that probably could, like Will Levis, quarterback Kentucky. I think he's definitely going to go in the first round. Right. We did not have him here. Hendon Hooker, the quarterback Tennessee, could end up in round 1. Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back from Alabama, could have ended up here in the bottom half of the first round. I think Philadelphia might have been a spot there for him. I'm also not ruling him out to Cincinnati at 28, by the way.
Interesting.
Wide receivers that didn't go in the first round. Zay Flowers, Boston College, was the next wide receiver up. Tight end. I think we got all three of the tight ends. I don't think Sam Laporta or Luke Musgrave ends up in round one.
No.
Anton Harrison, offensive tackle, Oklahoma, did not go. Neither did DeJuan Jones from Ohio State. Osiris Torrance, interior offensive lineman from Florida, did not go. In our Adetomiwa Adebariye, Keon White, a couple of edge rushers did not go. Brian Brzee, probably the best defensive lineman, interior defensive lineman, did not go. No linebackers went in the first round. Realistically, do you think any off-ball linebackers go in the first round?
I mean, I think Drew Sanders from Arkansas could, but I don't foresee it happening.
Heard a lot of talk Jack Campbell to Buffalo at 27.
Yeah, that could happen. I mean, that's a big need for them, and I think they're a team that wouldn't balk at taking an off-ball linebacker. I do like me some Jack Campbell. So
we had 6 corners go. I think that number feels right. I think Keely Ringo's the next one up, and I think him going into the early part of day 2 is probably right. And I don't foresee another safety go until maybe late round 2. I think that's when Antonio Johnson comes off the board at that point.
Yeah, I think the only other player you didn't mention that I'll toss out there is Mozzie Smith, the defensive lineman from Michigan. The Steelers like him a lot. It wouldn't surprise me if he's a surprise first-round pick.
Yeah, I'm a little lower on Mozzie Smith, I think, than the consensus is. So, all right, I'll quickly run through and we'll finish it up here. 1 to Carolina, C.J. Stroud. Let me stop. This was if me and Shane were the GMs. If you're just catching this part of it now, this is what me and Shane would do if we were running these draft war rooms. C.J. Stroud, 1 to Carolina. Bryce Young, 2 to Houston. Arizona, 3. Will Anderson, 4. Indianapolis. Paris Johnson, offensive tackle, Ohio State. 5. Seattle. Jalen Carter, defensive line, Georgia. 6. Detroit. Christian Gonzalez, corner, Oregon. 7. Las Vegas. Joey Porter Jr., corner, Penn State. 8, Atlanta, Nolan Smith, edge rusher, Georgia. 9, Chicago, Peter Skoronski, offensive lineman, Northwestern. 10, Philadelphia, Devin Witherspoon, corner, Illinois. 11, Tennessee, Jackson Smith and Jigba, wide receiver, Ohio State. 12, Houston, Tyree Wilson, edge rusher, Texas Tech. 13, New York Jets, Broderick Jones, offensive tackle, Georgia. 14, New England, Quentin Johnston, wide receiver, TCU. 15, Green Bay, Michael Mayer, tight end, Notre Dame. 16, Washington, Brian Branch, safety, Alabama. 17, Pittsburgh, Darnell Wright, offensive tackle, Tennessee. 18, Detroit, Bijan Robinson, running back, Texas. 19, Tampa Bay, Deontay Banks, corner, Maryland. 20, Seattle, John Michael Schmitz, interior offensive line, Minnesota. 21, Chargers, Dalton Kincaid, tight end, Utah. 22, Baltimore, Kalijah Cansey, defensive line, Pitt. 23, Minnesota, Anthony Richardson, quarterback, Florida. 24, Jacksonville, Darnell Washington, tight end, Georgia. 25, New York Giants, Jordan Addison, wide receiver, Southern Cal. 26, Dallas, Steve Avila, interior offensive line, TCU. 27, Buffalo, Miles Murphy, edge rusher, Clemson. 28, Cincinnati, Emmanuel Forbes, corner, Mississippi State.